It was mid-October when I got hired at a 24-hour gas station just off Highway 67 in rural Nebraska. The sign outside blinked inconsistently. 24 hours gas groceries, like it was trying to warn anyone who came too close. The manager, a chain-smoking guy named Reggie, looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. "You sure about the night shift?" he asked, not making eye contact. "I need the money," I replied, and I did. Rent was overdue, my car barely ran, and I had no backup plan. Reggie stared at me for a second too long. Then he handed over a set of keys and a folded sheet of paper. "Everything you need to know is in here. Don't wander behind the station. Ever. And if the phone rings past 3 a.m., don't pick up." I laughed, thinking he was joking. Reggie didn't. My first few shifts were uneventful. Boredom was the biggest enemy. A couple of drunk drivers stopped for beer and snacks. Truckers filled up and disappeared into the night. And occasionally some weirdos came in talking about seeing things on the road, but nothing out of the ordinary. Still, there was something off. Every night around 2:47 a.m., the air turned icy, even when the heaters were blasting. And once, the station lights flickered in perfect rhythm with the beep of the microwave, as if syncing to some invisible heartbeat. One night, I noticed a man standing near pump 4, just standing, not moving, no car. I buzzed the intercom. "Hey, you need something?" No response. He just stared at the building. His face was obscured under a dark hoodie. I stepped out to confront him. But he was gone. No footprints, nothing. It was my 6th night on the job. 3:07 a.m. The phone rang. I froze. Reggie's voice echoed in my head. "Don't pick up after 3 a.m. It rang again and again. Curiosity got the better of me. I picked up. The voice on the other end whispered, "He sees you now." Click. I stood there, heart hammering in my chest. The lights flickered. The air felt heavy as if soaked in static. Outside, pump 4 lit up. No car. But the man was back. I finally decided to review the station's CCTV footage. I pulled the DVR from behind the counter and fast-forwarded to last night's time code. There he was, standing still. Pump 4. But then I saw something else. At 3:08 a.m., the camera inside the store showed me answering the phone. But something was behind me. A tall, shadowy figure with hollow eyes and a mouth that didn't move, but screamed. I never heard it, but the camera caught it. And then the screen glitched. Static. When the feed returned, I was gone. Just the empty store. I shut the DVR and sat back in the plastic chair behind the counter. My skin was clammy. The faint humming of the ceiling lights above buzzed louder than usual, like the building was holding its breath. I glanced at the wall clock. 2:56 a.m. Just a few minutes left before the hour that made the hair on my arms stand up every night. I told myself it was fatigue. My brain was playing tricks. Maybe I was stressed. Maybe I imagined the shadow figure, but my gut wasn't buying it. I got up, walked to the front windows, and peered out toward pump 4. The fluorescent overhead lights blinked, making the darkness around the pump even more pronounced. Nothing moved. No man. No shadow. I stepped back, locking the front door out of instinct. I wasn't even sure why. The station was open 24/7, but something about the coming minutes felt final, like something would cross a line and I needed to be on the safer side of it. The phone rang. 3 sharp tones. I didn't move. It rang again. A third time. I grabbed the receiver and yanked it out of the wall. The ringing stopped immediately. Dead silence. I was about to exhale when the monitor above the counter flickered. Security feed. Pump 4's camera turned black. I didn't even know that was possible. All the other cameras worked. Aisle cams, register, cooler section. But Pump 4's view was pure black. Not off, just gone. I stared at it, heart racing, unsure of what to do next. And then something even weirder happened. From behind the walk-in fridge door, I heard knocking. 3 slow knocks, followed by a pause. Then a fourth. Nobody had gone back there. I hadn't heard the door chime. The fridge only had one entrance, visible from where I stood. But the knocking came again, louder. I forced myself to move. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I needed to see. I grabbed the flashlight from beneath the counter and moved cautiously across the linoleum floor, each step sticky and amplified in the silence. I pressed my ear to the fridge door. Nothing. No breath, no movement, just the low hum of the cooling unit. I unlatched the door and swung it open. Empty. No one inside. Just rows of bottled drinks, some cardboard boxes, and the slight chill of refrigerated air. I let out a shaky laugh. Maybe it was the pipes. Maybe the compressor had knocked against something. I turned back toward the counter and froze. The door to the restroom was wide open. I hadn't opened it, and it had been shut all night. The lights inside flickered violently, and a shadow moved just out of view. I backed away slowly, refusing to look away from that open door. Suddenly, the motion sensor above the door dinged. Someone had just walked in. But the door hadn't opened, and no one was at the door. Then I heard breathing behind me. Not deep, not aggressive, just slow and shallow, like someone was standing inches behind me, trying not to be noticed. I turned quickly, flashlight up. No one. But the air was different, thicker. The smell of damp wood mixed with something else. Iron, maybe. Blood. I ran back behind the counter, shut the fridge monitor off, and powered down the screens. Screw this. I grabbed my phone, ready to call Reggie. But the screen had only one message flashing over and over. You answered. I dropped the phone. Then the front door, locked just minutes ago, creaked open by itself. And a man walked in. Same hoodie, same stillness. But this time he wasn't outside. This time he was here, inside with me. His hood fell back slowly, revealing a face that looked hollow, like it had been carved out of wax and left in the sun too long. Eyes that didn't blink. A mouth that opened and stayed that way. He didn't speak, just stepped forward. One foot, then another. I backed up against the wall behind the counter, reaching blindly for anything. A box cutter, a flashlight, anything. The man stopped, then pointed at the camera above the register. It turned black, just like pump 4. I blinked, and he was gone. The air snapped back to normal like a rubber band had been stretched and released. I collapsed into the chair, gasping. I was losing it. I had to be. I stayed in the chair for what felt like an hour, but the clock had barely moved. 3:29 a.m. Outside, nothing stirred. The wind had picked up. Dry leaves scraped across the parking lot like brittle fingers scratching the pavement. The air had that same cold charge to it, like right before a lightning storm. But no thunder, no lightning, just pressure. I grabbed my phone again, hoping the screen had fixed itself. Still there. You answered. I powered it off and shoved it deep into my backpack. If I had to deal with this tonight, I'd rather not do it while staring at a message that felt like a death sentence. I thought about calling Reggie from the landline. Maybe he'd pick up. Maybe he'd laugh, tell me it was all some twisted gas station hazing tradition, a prank for newbies. But the phone was dead. Silent, not even a dial tone. That's when I heard the hum again. It wasn't mechanical. It wasn't the fridges, the heaters, the lights. It was low, like a growl buried beneath the building. And it wasn't constant, it pulsed, like a chant without words, just vibrating noise. Deep, bone deep. I stepped around the counter and looked toward the back hallway, where the supply closet and the door marked "Employees Only" sat. I had never opened that door. Reggie never mentioned it, and I assumed it was some storage space or maybe a breaker room. But now it was the only place I hadn't checked. And the hum, it was coming from there. I approached slowly, every nerve in my spine tightening. The door had no handle, just a simple keyhole. I remembered the keys Reggie gave me my first day. There was one I'd never used, an old rusted brass key shaped differently from the others. I pulled it out and slid it into the lock. It turned like butter. The door opened inward. The hallway behind it wasn't lit. There were stairs, concrete steps, leading down. The hum grew louder, like it had been waiting to be let out. I should have turned back. I should have closed the door and never come back to that job. But I stepped inside. Each step down felt wrong, like I was going deeper than the building should allow. The station was a single-story structure. There shouldn't have been a basement. But I kept descending. The air turned dense. The hum vibrated through the walls now. And then I saw the light. A dim reddish glow came from the bottom. The stairs ended in a narrow corridor made of what looked like limestone, not concrete. Old, ancient. The walls were damp, and the smell, wet soil mixed with something decaying. The corridor led to a room, round, stone walls. In the center, a large circular metal hatch embedded in the ground. Runes or symbols I didn't recognize were etched around the rim. It looked ancient, like it belonged in a crypt, not under a gas station. But the worst part? The hatch was open. Just a crack. From the darkness below, the hum pulsed stronger. My stomach clenched. Something moved beneath it. I backed away, stumbling. My shoe hit something soft. I looked down. A blanket. No, a uniform. The same blue polo and name tag I wore. The tag read, James. I didn't know James. Reggie never mentioned a James. I knelt and found a wallet still in the pocket. The ID showed a young guy, maybe 20, dark hair and wide eyes. He looked like me. No, he looked exactly like me. Same jawline, same scar above the eyebrow, same freckle pattern. I dropped the wallet and ran back toward the stairs. The hum followed me, louder now. The walls trembled, dust falling from the ceiling. I reached the top and slammed the door shut, locking it. Everything went silent, but not peaceful. It felt like something had noticed me. I returned to the front of the store. The lights were back to normal. The camera for pump 4 showed the empty lot again. It was like nothing had happened. But the clock now read 4:12 a.m. Time had moved without me. Outside, the first light of dawn began to stain the horizon. Birds chirped distantly. I sat behind the counter, exhausted, shivering. That morning, Reggie showed up at 6 a.m. sharp. He walked in, looked at me like he expected to see a corpse. "You saw the basement, didn't you?" he asked softly. I didn't answer. I just stared at him. He lit a cigarette with shaking hands and looked out at pump 4. "I told you not to answer the phone," he muttered. I finally spoke. "What's down there?" He didn't look at me. "Whatever it is, it knows us now. And once it knows you, it starts over." I didn't understand. "Starts over?" He handed me an envelope. Inside were two things, a fresh name tag and a key ring. The name tag read, Tyler. "That's you now," he said. "I'm not coming back," I told him, standing. He nodded like he expected that. But then he said something that froze my blood. "You already did," and walked out. I didn't sleep that day. I couldn't. I tried. Sure, I shut all the blinds in my apartment, turned my phone off completely, wrapped myself in blankets like they could shield me from what I'd seen. But the hum, that impossible low-frequency vibration, kept echoing inside my skull like my bones remembered it, even if my brain wanted to forget. My reflection in the bathroom mirror didn't look quite right. My skin was paler. The freckle near my jaw, the one I used to joke made me look like a comic book character, looked a shade darker. And there was a faint bruise on my shoulder, just under the collarbone. Except I hadn't been hit, hadn't fallen, hadn't bumped into anything. It pulsed slightly, as if it were reacting to something that still lingered under my skin. I kept thinking about the uniform I'd found downstairs. James, who looked exactly like me. Same face, same scar, same eyes. I'd once read an article online about doppelgangers, those freaky coincidences where two strangers looked nearly identical, but this wasn't that. This wasn't coincidence. This was intentional. And the way Reggie looked at me that morning, that haunted, almost resigned look, like he'd seen this before, like he expected it. Around noon, I got up and did something I swore I wouldn't. I drove back to the station. I told myself I just needed to confirm it was real, that the place hadn't tiled had disappeared or burned down or turned into a fast food joint overnight. I pulled into the empty parking lot, the bright sun making the whole building seem harmless, almost comically normal. A white truck was parked near pump 4. Some delivery guy unloading crates of soda into the back room. A teenager, maybe 16 with headphones in and a bored expression, manned the register. He waved at me without recognition. I stepped inside slowly. Everything was in its place. The weird ticking of the rotating chip display, the faint buzz of the soda machines, the scent of burnt coffee that no one ever seemed to replace, but there was no sign of Reggie. I asked the kid where the manager was. He looked at me confused. Manager? He asked, blinking. There's no manager on day shift. I just hand over receipts to the truck guy. I asked about Reggie by name and the kid shrugged. I've only been working here a week, man. Never met him. You sure you got the right place? I walked out without answering. I circled the building, looking for something, anything, that would prove I hadn't hallucinated at all. But then I saw the side door, the one marked Employees Only, still there, still padlocked. And as I walked past it, I paused. There, right beneath the rusted handle, etched into the doorframe itself, were those same strange runes, barely visible in the sunlight. Like the wood had grown around them, like they'd been burned into the structure before the station was even built. I reached out and touched one, just brushed it with my fingertip, and instantly pulled back. A shock, hot and needle-thin, pulsed through my finger and all the way to my heart. Not painful, just invasive, like something had sniffed me, like something had tasted me. That night, I didn't plan to go back. I told myself I'd quit, block the number, find a new job, anything but that station. But when midnight hit, I was driving. My body moved without permission, hands steady on the wheel, radio off, eyes fixed dead ahead. When I reached the station, the lot was empty. Not just of people, but light. All the exterior lamps were off. Inside, the lights were on, but not the normal fluorescent glow. They flickered with a pale blue hue, unnatural, like bioluminescence from the deep ocean. My keycard still worked. The chime above the door didn't go off. Silence wrapped the inside like a vacuum. The registers were open, but the screens were blank. The cameras were off. Not a single screen showed anything. Just black. I walked past the aisles, each one stretching longer than I remembered. The shadows between shelves too thick, too still. And when I got to the counter, I froze. There was a new name tag waiting there. It said, Evan. I picked it up with trembling fingers. The font was the same, the plastic clip, everything. Except I had no memory of choosing that name. A door creaked behind me. The basement door. the one with the rusted brass key. It was open, not wide, just enough. Enough for me to see the darkness waiting below. Enough to hear the hum again. And above it, something new. A voice. My voice, calling for help. I should have run. Any sane person would have. But something about hearing my own voice coming from down there, muffled, desperate, echoing up from the shadows, froze me in place. It wasn't just curiosity. It was like being called home by something that remembered me better than I remembered myself. I stood there at the edge of that open door, staring down into the black where the hum had become a living pulse, a second heartbeat under my skin, and the voice kept calling. Please, I'm still down here. I'm still me. Please help. Over and over. Same words, same tone. Like a broken record, but too real to ignore. My legs moved before my brain agreed. One foot on the stairs, then the next. The air grew colder. The hum matched my breathing. The further I descended, the more I felt like I was slipping out of the real world. Like reality was thinning around me. The walls weren't just stone anymore. They moved slightly, contracting, expanding, like lungs. The smell was unbearable now. Damp earth, rot, rusted metal, and old, wet cloth. I reached the bottom, and it was different this time. The corridor had changed. Longer, narrower, the stone had become flesh-toned like dried sinew stretched tight. I kept walking, and the voice grew louder, closer. But it wasn't calling for help anymore. It was talking to me. You never left, you know. Not really. You just reset. Like all the others. Reggie thought he broke free too. That name, Reggie, snapped something in me. I remembered how he'd looked at me. Not with pity. With familiarity. The way you look at your own reflection when you're trying to convince yourself you still exist. I turned a corner and the hallway opened into a chamber I hadn't seen before. It was massive. Circular. Carved like a cathedral, but far older. Symbols lined every inch of the walls, glowing faintly blue, like veins under skin. In the center, the hatch had fully opened. Something moved down there. I didn't want to look, but I did. And what I saw broke me in a quiet, irreversible way. Hundreds, maybe thousands of uniforms, all identical, all with different name tags, strewn in a pile like discarded skin. Some new, some decades old, all stained, some soaked in blood, others in black tar. Atop the pile, one figure moved. He looked exactly like me, but not quite. His skin was too tight, his eyes too wide, like someone had worn me for too long and the mask was starting to slip. He smiled, slow and unnatural, and said, I've been waiting for you, Tyler, or was it Evan, James? He laughed then, a brittle, dry sound, and stretched his neck in a twitchy motion. You forgot again, didn't you? I couldn't speak. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. My breath fogged in the cold air. I was trembling now, not from fear, but from realization. My memories of getting this job, of Reggie, of my apartment, all felt staged. Set pieces in a play I hadn't realized I was acting in. The copy of me stood and stepped forward. They feed on identity, he said. Every time someone steps behind that counter and answers that phone, they start to feed. Your name, your memories, yourself, slowly peeled away until you're just another echo, calling out from the dark. He reached into the pile and pulled out a name tag. Alex. He offered it to me. I think this one's next. You'll like Alex. He's got a brave face. Won't last long. I turned and ran. Didn't look back. Didn't listen to the voice that tried to mimic my mother's, then my sister's, then my own. The voices blended into a choir of lost selves screaming from the walls. The symbols pulsed harder, brighter, like veins about to burst. I climbed the stairs on all fours. The door above didn't close this time. It waited for me. I slammed it shut behind me, locked it, and collapsed on the floor of the convenience store, gasping like I drowned and barely made it back to shore. The lights were off. the screen still dead. And then one flickered back to life. Pump 4. A woman, mid-30s, confused, standing by the pump with her phone to her ear. I knew what she was hearing. My voice. Hello? This is the night shift clock. Can I help you? I couldn't sleep for 3 nights after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the hum behind my eyelids. I felt the cold of the stairs, the shifting walls that breathed like some ancient throat, the pile of uniforms that shouldn't exist. I couldn't explain it to anyone. Not that I had anyone left to explain it to. I checked my phone contacts, and most of them were gone. Just names I didn't recognize, and no messages. My call history was blank. No emails, no social media presence. It was like I'd been scrubbed from reality. When I tried logging into anything, the sites told me the account didn't exist. I stared at my reflection in the mirror, hoping something would flicker, some glitch in the illusion, but it didn't. I looked normal. I looked like whoever I'd become. But the thing that scared me the most, I kept finding name tags around my apartment. They showed up in strange places. One stuck to my fridge, one inside the microwave, another in the folds of my bedsheet. Every single one had a different name. Tyler, Ted, Evan, James, Aiden, Lucas, Reggie. And they were all me. I remembered moments attached to each name. Flickers, like video clips from different lives. Drinking with friends in a dorm room as Evan. Crying in a hospital hallway as Aiden. Laughing at a dog's sloppy kisses as Reggie. All too fast, too fractured to hold on to, but real. My memories weren't mine. They were borrowed, recycled. I tried to leave the city. I got on the highway with a full tank of gas and didn't stop until I was 3 hours out. The plan was to find some shitty motel and sleep until the world made sense again. But around 3 a.m., I passed a familiar sign. Not possible. It said, Jackson Gas Go Exit. 13. Same logo. Same blue and yellow lights. Same goddamn station. I didn't stop. I floored it. Heart racing, sweat on my palms, and I just kept driving. For hours. The sun started to rise, and I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe I'd outrun it. Maybe the thing tethering me to that place had snapped. But when I pulled into a diner parking lot to eat, the waitress looked at me like she'd seen a ghost. She brought coffee without asking, set it down with a trembling hand. You got out, she whispered. I froze. What? She leaned in closer. I used to be Reggie, back in '98. She said it so casually, like it was her name, her title, her prison. I didn't speak. My hands were shaking too hard to lift the mug. She sat across from me, eyes tired, mouth twitching like the words were knives inside her. You think it ends when you leave, but it doesn't. They follow. They plant pieces of themselves in your head. The voices, the memories, the names. Eventually they grow too loud, and you'll go back. She pulled a name tag from her apron and slid it toward me. Marla. You'll wear this one soon. I left the coffee untouched and ran out the door. I didn't look back. Couldn't. If I saw her face again, I'd crack. I'd fall through whatever threadbare illusion was keeping me from collapsing. I drove until my tank hit E. Found a crappy motel and locked myself inside. I stayed there for 2 days. Didn't sleep. Didn't eat. Just stared at the door, waiting for something to knock. It never did. But then the phone rang. A motel landline. I didn't answer, but the voicemail played. My voice added, You forgot your shift. Please come back. I unplugged the phone. I smashed the TV, shuttered the mirror, anything reflective, because now I wasn't alone in my reflection. Something looked back. Not me. Something older and hungrier, patient. And then, in the middle of that second night, I heard the sound. The hum, not loud, just under the bed, waiting. I didn't sleep, not in any real way. I'd doze off and the hum would vibrate through my skull like a tuning fork stuck in bone. Then I'd wake up to whispers, footsteps just beyond the motel door, the click of a name tag being dropped outside. Always a different name. I stopped checking. It was too much. My skin didn't feel like it belonged to me anymore, like it was being worn thin from the inside. My thoughts weren't all mine. Sometimes I'd think something, run, hide, and then hear it whispered back from under the floor, word for word, like someone was reading my mind in reverse. On the third day, I broke. I needed to know, not just what it was, but why. Why the gas station? Why the repetition? Why the voices? Why me? So I went back. I know how that sounds, like the dumbest horror trope in the book. But this wasn't about bravery or stupidity. It was like being pulled by gravity. Some part of me knew I had to go back or I'd eventually be dragged anyway. I arrived just after midnight. No cars in the lot. The lights flickered in and out like a pulse. The front doors slid open before I touched them, and the smell, earth and copper and wet cloth, it hit me like a memory. Behind the counter, everything was exactly how I'd left it, except one thing. The trapdoor was already open. It was like it knew I was coming. But this time, I brought something with me. I'd found it tucked inside a hidden panel in my trunk. Don't ask me how I knew to look there, I just did, like I'd done it before. It was an old journal, bound in leather, the pages yellowed and brittle. No name, no date, just the words, "Do not read alone," scrawled on the inside cover. Too late. The first entry hit like a gut punch. June 17th, 1971. We've broken through. The excavation beneath the station revealed something ancient. It wasn't stone, it wasn't wood. It moved, and when we touched it, it spoke. Not in words, in feelings, hunger, memory, identity. We sealed it. We thought it was over. There were hundreds of entries. Workers disappearing, reappearing, forgetting their own names, waking up in other people's lives. Some of them drew diagrams, spirals, runes, symbols that matched the ones I saw in the chamber below. The deeper I read, the more I realized the gas station was built on a prison, not for a person, for a concept. An entity that fed on self, names, memories, identity, ego, anything that made you you. And every night shift was a ritual. Every new employee, a sacrifice. The phone calls, the pump glitches, the security feed distortions, all distractions. Ways to weaken the mind, to pull the soul out of alignment so it could be peeled away bit by bit. And when you finally cracked, you joined the pile. I turned at the last page. One sentence. If you're reading this, you're already in the next cycle. I dropped the book, backed away. But the counter lights flickered. The monitors blinked to life. All pumps, all cars, all screens, showing me different versions, different uniforms, different names, hundreds of me, frozen on camera, staring into the lens like they knew I was watching. And then they moved, in sync. All said it together, in my voice. Come home. I ran to the trapdoor. Maybe it was suicide. Maybe it was defiance. Maybe I just needed to know. But as I descended again into that pulsing corridor, something was different. The walls weren't breathing anymore. They were watching. And in the chamber, the pile of uniforms was gone. In its place, a mirror. Massive, carved from obsidian, framed in bone. And inside, I saw every version of me. Some crying, some screaming, some laughing in madness. But one stood still, calm, eyes locked with mine. He stepped forward, and so did I. We touched the glass at the same time. And in that instant, Fun. I remembered everything. Every cycle. Every name. Every death. Every reset. I wasn't just another victim. I was the first, the willing one, the keeper. You still with me? Let's finish this. I don't know how long I stood there, face to face with myself, not a reflection, not a vision. This was another me, one that remembered everything. The first shift, the first ascent, the first time I heard the hum and didn't run. The first time I said yes. Back then, the world was different. It was 1958. The Jackson family was just setting up the first gas go, drilling deep into the desert to install fuel lines and underground tanks. But what they found wasn't oil, wasn't gas. It was living stone, a breathing network of caverns etched with shifting symbols and veins that pulsed with red light. They should have stopped. They didn't. I was their first employee. I was curious, and I made a deal. The entity, it doesn't speak with words. It whispers through memory, through temptation. It offered me the one thing I didn't even realize I wanted: immortality. Not just life, but presence, permanence. To never be forgotten, to exist forever in the minds of others. And in return, it would take the others. Each new employee would wear my face, carry my echo, work my shift, bleed into me, memory by memory, name by name, until I became many. Until I became all of them. But somewhere along the line, I forgot who I was. Too many names, too many memories, too many deaths. I lost control. The entity grew stronger. It began to choose its own hosts, not just to preserve me, but to feed itself, to spread. And now you've seen too much. You opened the book. You walked the halls. You heard the hum. That wasn't just a sound. It was a call. And now you're part of the ritual. You're not reading this anymore. You're remembering it. You're standing behind the counter. The air smells of burnt dust and diesel. The phone is ringing. The clock blinks 12 a.m. A customer walks in. You swear you've seen his face before. He smiles like he knows you. You glance at your shirt. You're wearing a name tag. It says Tyler, Reggie, Aiden. And suddenly you realize